Hola! So in today's video, I want to talk about dating abroad. I kind of want to talk a little bit about like my own dating style, the things that I thought I was looking for in a person, in a relationship, and all of that. Good and bad experiences that I've had while dating while abroad, primarily in Spain, because that's where I spent the majority of my time as a single woman doing my master's programs there. And then also what my current dating situation is. I had to change into a sweater because with that open jacket, I was actually freezing. The way I always saw dating as and how I perceived it to be, right? Even when I was in different relationships and stuff. So growing up, I grew up Peruvian American. So my parents are from Peru, but I was born and raised in the US. In my household, everything was really Peruvian. The food we ate, the culture, the language, we would speak Spanish. So everything was like more geared towards that side. So sometimes like it honestly made it a little hard for me to really connect with like my American side. And then at the same time, many Peruvians, my family included, for the most part, didn't feel like I was Peruvian enough because I wasn't born there. And so dating was a little strange because I felt like I couldn't really connect to many American guys. Like we were just very different. And that's why I always felt like dating a Latino made the most sense, because even if they couldn't speak Spanish, because many American Latinos like don't speak Spanish just because of like assimilation, trying to assimilate and everything like that, I thought that it would just be easier cultural wise. So like if they did speak the language, awesome, amazing. And if they didn't, they would understand a lot of things culturally. So like maybe the way I would do things, how I would cook things, or you know, like things like that, right? So it's like those little things like with your parents and stuff that like you wouldn't really have to explain because they already understood the culture. That was one of the reasons why I exclusively, for the longest time, only dated Latinos. I'm gonna take you guys actually through my whole like dating life. So at 17 was the first time that I had a boyfriend. It was my senior year of high school. I hadn't had a boyfriend before then, and honestly, for one reason, that I would always see girls in my class or other friends and stuff kind of cry over guys, and I didn't want to cry over a guy. I felt like that was the dumbest thing ever. And at 17, I was crying over a guy who was definitely not worth it. He was Latino, he was born and raised in El Salvador, came to the US, I think when he was like 16 or 17. That was the thing though, like I, for the long time, didn't know how old he was and didn't know his birthday. Like all of these were really red flags. And so I did, yeah, that whole thing happened. Anyway, fast forward, like that was not a relationship that lasted, but he was a Latino. My second long-term relationship started when I was 19, so it was 2 years after that, of my second year of university, with someone who was of Mexican background, but he was raised, I guess, more American. And so we actually dated for like a long time. We dated for like almost 7 years. And I think sometimes like the cultural part was a little bit not what I was expecting. There were certain bumps when it came to that because of the cultural differences. But anyway, once that relationship did end though, about 9 months later, I moved to Spain. I was single for like the first time in almost 10 years. And I was like, well, I might as well start dating. So I got some apps. At this point, like I started dating before apps really were a thing, like before they existed. Like, so now I was thrown into this new dating life in a whole new country and stuff. So it was definitely different, especially because like in Spain, obviously they speak Spanish. I grew up speaking Spanish, but it's a different Spanish. So there's some things that they say and in a way that they say that I literally don't understand. Like we can be speaking the same language. And I'm like, ¿qué? Like, ¿de qué estás hablando? Literally no idea what you're talking about. But I digress. So I went on some dates, like with people that I met through these apps. Yes, this is my third outfit change, but I couldn't finish recording it that other day. So here we are. And I changed up the setup a little bit, so I hope you like it. I think I'm going to start with the good experiences because those are always nice, right? Okay, so I met this one guy, I think it was through Tinder. He was Spanish and Moroccan. I forget which one of his parents was from Morocco and which one was from Spain, but like one was from each. And he was like born and raised right outside of like Barcelona, and he was like super nice. Met up like many times, but like nothing ever happened. Like nothing. Like it seemed like very much like a friend thing, and I was like, that's cool because like you're chill to talk to. Like it's not like he was super I don't even know, like super overwhelming or overbearing or anything like that. He was just like very chill. Like he had a car, so he would like pick me up and we'd go different places, which was nice because I got to like see maybe parts of Barcelona I probably wouldn't have like if it wasn't for that. So that was kind of cool. So that was definitely a really good experience. I also had lots of like really neutral experiences. Like there were sometimes some dates that I went on that literally went to like nothing, which I mean is expected, right? Like you're not going to click with obviously everyone, and you probably shouldn't even want to, because that's like too many decisions to then have to make. Like, oh my God, if everyone likes me and I like everyone, like who am I actually gonna date? Like what's gonna happen here? This one guy, he was Turkish, I wanna say. I could be totally wrong, but I also met him through an app. Can't remember which one. And we talked for like a bit and stuff. He was super nice. We went to this place that have like gyros and like a few different things, and super nice. He actually paid for the meal, which is actually surprising because if you've ever dated like a Spanish guy, like they like to go Dutch on everything, or at least that's been my experience, especially with Catalans. And the first guy, actually, he did not. He would always pay for everything. The Spanish Moroccan guy, I guess Catalan Moroccan guy, he would always pay for everything. Like he never expected me to pay for anything, and he also just didn't expect anything. So I'm always curious. I'm just like, what like, were you just looking for company? I don't know, but in the end, super sweet, like super sweet. This other one, I also went out only on that one date, and he also paid for everything. You know, didn't expect anything. We texted a little bit after that, but then it just kind of like died out. So it was like whatever. But it was kind of cool like dating people that were from different backgrounds, because even in the US, obviously you can date people from different backgrounds, right? But if they've already been living in the US for a while, like they're very Americanized in certain ways on like how to do things, how things are done and stuff like that. But if you're dating somebody who's like born and raised in different countries, then obviously things are going to be very different, right? For them, because dating in every country can be different. Okay, maybe some bad stories. Let me throw in some bad stories now. This one Spanish guy who's like from southern Spain, I think it was like Sevilla, but he had been living in Barcelona for like a couple of years at this point. And so we went out. He had told me we were gonna meet at this restaurant, which wasn't too far from like where I lived. It was like maybe a 15-minute walk, and I was like, okay, cool, sounds great. So obviously I didn't eat. I didn't eat before going because I'm like, oh, we're going to go eat, like, right? Like, so I won't eat, we'll meet there. So we get there, he's on his motorcycle, and I was like, okay, cool. Like, you know, he's gonna unmount and put his helmet away, and we're gonna go inside and eat. But then he's like, no, actually, I was thinking we can go to this other place. And I was like, okay, fine. So we go for, he's like, first I need to get gas. So I was like, okay. So we go on his motorcycle, which honestly, motorcycles don't scare me, but I know that they freak my parents out. So like, I know if like they hear this, they're like, why are you on a motorcycle? But anyway. We went to the gas station, and he like got some chips and some beer. Chips that I don't even like, because if you know me, I only like plain chips, like no flavor whatsoever, like potato chips, just plain, original, like wavy, nothing else. Like I don't eat Cheetos, I don't eat anything like flavored like that. I just don't know why, I just don't like it. And he got some chips that were flavored, and that I was like, okay, I'm not gonna eat that. In my mind, I was like just thinking that. So he got us 2 beers and a pack of chips and some gas, which honestly, when he got the gas, I saw like how much the gas had gone up, and it literally was still pretty much in red. I'm like, maybe like it's broken, maybe it's not working right, like I don't know, but hopefully wherever it is that we're going, like it's okay. And like maybe that should have been a red flag, like the fact that I didn't know where we were really going. I literally had just met this person. It was the first time I was actually meeting them in person. So, you know, all of these little things that afterwards you think about, but in that moment you're like, oh yeah, the plot. Like, what is the plot here? So anyway, we get back on the motorcycle, we go up the mountain. If you've ever been to Barcelona, you know that there's Montjuic, where there's the castle, there's obviously like the fountains at the bottom, the Museum of National Art at the Catalunya, like on top. So we go to that mountain, and we go to this place that like overlooks the city, which is honestly really beautiful. I went there afterwards. I really enjoyed that spot. And so we like, you know, we're just talking, having the beers and stuff like that. He was just like pointing out certain places in the city. I think at that point I had only been there for like a few months. So yeah, he was just showing me different things and whatnot. And then after a while, like I'd maybe had half of my beer. I think he had finished his, and he had been eating his and smoking. Like these are total turn offs for me. I was like, ugh. It's like, ugh. It was just like, But anyway, so he points in like one certain direction and he's just like, oh, you know, like my apartment's over there and stuff. It's like really close. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And he's like, yeah, like and he was like trying to in a way show off that he had like multiple apartments, because he's like, oh, I had this one and the other one and stuff like that. And he was like, okay, so yeah, like, but I live with someone, but like they're out of town for the weekend and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, that's cool. Like in my mind, I'm like, I'm not going anywhere with you. Like, I don't know you. I already get this feeling that I don't fully trust you. And now I'm on a mountain, like in the dark. Like, at least that place wasn't fully dark, but I'm like, it's dark. Like, I'm on a mountain. Like, I just need to get off this mountain. And he just like keeps insisting on this, like his roommate's like not around, like the house is empty. And we get to the point where he says, so, you know, like if we have sex, it doesn't mean that I'm not gonna talk to you. And I was just like, what? Like, guys do a whole bunch of stuff, right? Like some will say that, some will do that, some will, you know, whatever. But I'm just like, I was already getting this weird vibe off of you. You're trying to kiss me and you have like this Cheeto breath and I'm not feeling it at all. I'm just like, no. And in my mind, I'm like going into like flight mode. I'm like, okay, I have to get out of here. I have to like get off this mountain. I don't feel safe. I don't want to be here. Like, this is just not fun for me at all. How do I get off? And so at that point, I'm just like, so you had mentioned we were gonna get food and stuff, right? Like, can we go get some food? Because these trips, like, I just don't like them. I don't want them. And so he's like, well, I mean, I paid for like the gas and the chips and the beer and stuff. So it's like, I don't really have any money. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I will get myself food. Can we just go? Because I'm like really hungry. I didn't eat because I thought we were going to eat. So as soon as like we got down, I was just like, can you just drop me off at the metro? Like, I'm just gonna go. As quickly as he stops, I take my helmet off, I get off the motorcycle and start walking towards the metro. He like comes after me and he's just like, well, what's wrong? Like, what happened? Like, you don't want to like continue hanging out? I was like, no, I'm good. No, thanks. And so I blocked him. Like after that, I blocked him. I was just like, I don't want to talk to this person. Like, I don't know. Like it wasn't clearly like his intentions, my thoughts and everything were like not meshing whatsoever. So I was just like, no. So I just blocked him. And then a few weeks later, somebody with like a similar picture messaged me on WhatsApp and I was just like, oh gosh. And then from then on, with different numbers for like a few months, like not every month or so, but like every couple of months or whatever, not anymore, but for a while, he would just continue messaging me. And I was just like, I am not interested. I would just like either not respond, not look at it, block it immediately. I was just like, this is just so exhausting. Like, he's just not my type to begin with. And now like with all this stuff, I'm just like, nope. But anyway, I mean, I guess there could be worse stories than that, but it was just like not a fun experience, especially when you're living it in the moment as a woman. You're by yourself in the dark in a city that like, you know a bit, but like you're not obviously as comfortable, or then you could be somewhere else. Yeah, so that part wasn't fun. But okay, aside from that, there were other dates that were just like, you know, not anything super great, super anything like that. They were all pretty mediocre, I guess. But leading up to more recently, about 1.5 years ago, before I went to Morocco and met my current boyfriend, I had started dating this Colombian guy. Also met him through an app, but at this point I was like really tired of apps. I was just like, this is not how I see my life unfolding, like how I met the person that I'm supposed to be with. Like, I love meeting people organically. You know, sometimes that can be harder, especially if you're not doing a lot, especially if you're just like me, who's always on my laptop doing things. Like, it's harder. But yeah, but I was like, I'll just try it, see if the vibe's cool. But at that point I was really not caring at all. It was like, if we talk and like we end up hanging out, cool. If we talk and we don't hang out, cool. Like, at this point I was just so done with it. So back to my original thing of like exclusively dating Latinos, I was like, well, if I'm going to be on these apps, then I'm going to be intentional about who I'm going to talk to, and I want to talk to people who are more similar in the way that I think. So Latinos it is. So I started mainly only talking to Latinos. There was this one guy that I met who's Colombian, who's actually also doing his master's program in Barcelona. And so we met up a few times. Like, we cooked together. We did things like, you know, just hang out, going to the park, or like grabbing a beer or something like that, like simple things. And the last time I was seeing him before I was going to Morocco, two things. One, I was rushing around because I was like, I need to find a dress to wear at the Majorelle Garden, so that it like goes well with like the blue there. So I feel like I need to either wear white to stand out a lot or yellow. So I was like running around Barcelona looking for a dress. Yeah, I did that. And he was kind of like helping me. He was like, oh, well, like he was like taking pictures and sending me and stuff like that. I was like, that's really sweet. And then afterwards, we actually met up with one of my other friends and we were just talking. I think I was like packing and like doing or my nails or something like that. And we were talking about the US. Like my friend and I, obviously born and raised in the US, Latino background. He born in Colombia, I think never having visited the US. He seemed to have a better perception or perspective or a better idea, impression of what the US is than to people who were actually born and raised there. Like he just seemed to be like, that was his ultimate goal of wanting to go to the US, while I've always been very adamant that the US is the last place that I want to live. Like I don't want to live there. I don't know, it just started giving me like this weird vibe and stuff. And like just the conversation was just going way downhill. I was like, it's not going that great. I was like, whatever, we'll just keep talking to see if like anything happens. But I wasn't already feeling it. Like, you know, it just wasn't what I wanted, I think. Like even though on paper it might have been great, but in reality it just wasn't. I went to Morocco with obviously having no expectations. I'm like, I'm kind of talking to this guy, but whatever, I'm going here for like a school project. So we get to Morocco because I went with my group and we stay at this little riad hostel in Marrakesh, not too far from like the plaza. And unfortunately there were roaches there, so I do not recommend. The next morning at breakfast, my group, we all ate breakfast together and then they ended up going downstairs to start getting ready. I was in the process of like applying to like this remote job. So I was like, let me just continue working on this and then I'll like join you guys. During that time while I was working there by myself, Bebino, we call him Bebino because we mixed Bebe with Ino. Ino is Amazigh, which is his native language, and Bebe is Spanish for my native language. So, and Ino means my, and Bebe is like baby, so my baby, Bebino. Bebino came up to have breakfast and he was by himself, like he was just, you know, there. Apparently, and I don't remember this, apparently he had tried saying hi to me a couple times. I really was like in my zone. I was like, I have to apply to this job. I have to do it now. I have to finish before we go off and explore for the day. Wasn't paying attention at all. I think like, but I did notice him. I was like, oh, he's kind of cute, you know, like I wonder where he's from. But we didn't talk. Then he said like, hello, maybe a little like louder, a little, I don't know. And so we started talking and that's when I found out that he was actually coming home because he is Moroccan and he's been doing his PhD in Hungary. And so he was coming home for like the summer and it just so happened that his plane got in so late that he needed to stay for the night because then he had to take like a 4 or 5 hour bus ride to where he actually lives. So he ended up staying at this place that we were staying at, which was such a funny coincidence. And we just like talked, like we really got along, we really clicked. It felt like super easy, super nice. Like obviously neither of us was thinking like, oh my God, like we're gonna start dating and stuff because like I'm living in Spain, he's living in Hungary, like what? So obviously no expectations at all of anything, but we just got along really well. So we exchanged Instagrams and we started talking and we talked a lot. Like that trip to Morocco ended up being so different than what I expected. It was like amazing really in that way because I had no expectations of like meeting anybody on this trip, let alone, like I said, somebody who wasn't part of the Latino culture, somebody totally out of it, and a culture that I really don't know too much about aside from like what the media has mentioned and everything, right? So culture has definitely been a thing and a topic that we talk about a lot because we want to make sure that even though our cultures are very different and it's impossible for us to expect that the other one's just going to absorb the other's culture, we want to be respectful of it for the things that like is important. Like religiously, we talked about that from like the beginning. He actually asked me, he's like, I grew up Muslim, but I'm not Muslim at all. Like, are you religious? And I was like, I grew up Catholic, but I'm not Catholic anymore. Like, so that thankfully was like never an issue. And it's not like we really have taken parts of those religious things into our lives aside from Christmas because I love Christmas. I'm never going to not love Christmas. Yeah, it's definitely been a lot of hard conversations, like talking about like finances, obviously language, because English for him is like his third language or even fourth possibly. And that was another thing that was actually really interesting for me because I'm like, I always wanted to speak so many languages and now I'm dating somebody who is speaking more languages fluently than I am, which is amazing. So it was like more the interest on like the intellectual level because he is doing a PhD on gender studies, which also surprised me that somebody from Morocco, a man nonetheless, doing a PhD in gender studies and talking about like masculinities that exist and how to kind of combat them and everything. I'm just like, what? How did I happen to find you in this small little riad in Marrakesh, Morocco? Like, I will never know how the stars aligned this way, but I'm so glad that they did. We just kept talking. We kept talking through Instagram. Eventually we like transferred over to WhatsApp and we're talking there. And then we decided to meet up before I left Morocco because with my group, we were there for about 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks. And so those last like 2 or 3 days, I ended up going back to Marrakesh to spend them with him to see if like this was really going to be anything or like what are we going to do. We got along really well. Honestly, he's just super sweet. It was definitely not what I was expecting at all. I'm really grateful that, like I said, the stars aligned and it so happened that we were in the same place at the same time. It was just the right place to be, the right time and everything. Oh my God, I'm tearing up. But now we've been living in Budapest for the last like 5 or 6 weeks. I landed here January 1st. And of course with everything, it's like a learning curve. Like there are still going to be certain differences that exist within us that, you know, me having been born in the US and grown up there, but also with a lot of Peruvian influence, him literally growing up in a little village where nobody in his family actually went to school or went to like high school or anything past that, and he's getting a PhD. So like for him, he's also breaking a lot of different barriers and stereotypes and things like this that nobody else in his family had done before. So it's been a journey. Dating abroad is definitely something that can be hard, especially when you end up being in like a long distance relationship. For the longest time we would travel back and forth between Barcelona and well, Debrecen, but we'd meet a lot of times in Budapest. It's definitely been a journey. If dating abroad is something that you are interested in, I think it's one of the things that you should start with, and it's how I went into this relationship, was asking so many questions, so many ideas, like so many thoughts and like how you think about the future. Like literally finances was something that I talked about. Like, are we gonna have joint accounts, separate accounts, like that? Because it's important to talk about. And I think it's like topics that most people don't want to talk about, especially when you're first starting to talk to somebody and you don't really know them. You don't want to scare them away, but if they're the right person, you're not going to scare them away because they're going to be in that same mentality as you are. And they're going to want to know about these things too. Obviously not everybody is in the same mentality. Some people are going to be, some people aren't. Ideally, you're finding the person who is, so that you are finding somebody that's right for you. There's still so many things that we're learning about each other as we're living together, which is why I wanted to live together, to actually learn about those things sooner rather than later. Because if it ends up being, you know, like a waste of time, I'm like, I'd rather know about it now and not 5 years down the road when then we're just like, okay, now we should live together. Like, no, it's better to just learn those things now. Even if it's hard, even if it's like a little inconvenient, but thankfully because I just work online, I don't have that issue. So I'm curious if you've ever dated somebody abroad and how that experience was for you. Definitely let me know in the comments and stay tuned for the next video. Make sure to subscribe. I'll see you soon.